2019, Mandan, North Dakota. Early in the morning on March 25th, security footage shows a man with a very distinctive walk park at a McDonald's and then leave on foot. He appears on a different security system for RJR maintenance and management moments later, face covered to hide his identity. He did not rob the business, nor did he encounter anyone else before he left. Days later, security footage again catches a man park in the same place, in the same truck, and walk, very distinctly, to RJR maintenance and management again. However, this time, the man carried a revolver and a knife. 4 people had just arrived from work at RJR. They would be found soon after this encounter, shot and stabbed. Nearly 100 stab wounds total. The case is technically solved, but there are so many mysteries left to figure out. Most importantly, why did it happen? This is a study of strange. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Michael May. On today's episode, I interview Brian O'Connell, BOC as he's known to his friends, and this is about a strange true crime that is honestly very recent, especially compared to most of the stories I cover. It covers a quadruple murder and its subsequent trial in Mandan, North Dakota. Brian is a feature film director and writer-producer of television. This murder case so intrigued Brian that it inspired him to visit the town, attend the trial, and write a pilot for a TV series, and he's actually mapped out the whole series, 5 seasons worth, all inspired by these events. And we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end of our conversation. Before I get into the interview, though, allow me to take a few moments just for some podcast housekeeping here. First, Halloween is a-comin', and in celebration of the spooky season, a Study of Strange's episodes are going to shift into some more paranormal, supernatural material, hopefully some scary stuff, and it's going to include more interviews and personal stories and anecdotes from guests than my usual setup. If you have any personal tales of anything paranormal or scary, email me at astudyofstrange@gmail.com, all one word. There's not a lot of time before Halloween, but I'd still love to try to have some people on the show, and we can always have a paranormal episode or two, even if we miss Halloween. So email me anyway, no matter what day it is, about your personal stories. And thank you to everyone who's listened to the podcast so far. We are still brand spanking new. If you're enjoying the show, subscribe, rate, and review. Also, read about our guest or any other ways to support the pod in our show notes, either on your listening app or visit www.astudyofstrange.com. We also have a special Patreon giveaway going on right now, and you can find out more about that through our website as well. Now, let's turn our attention to Mandan, North Dakota in 2019. Brian will give you a better, more detailed synopsis here in just a second, but just to set things up. A man named Chad Isaak has been arrested, convicted, and there's actually some recent news about him that we'll get into as well, for the brutal slayings of 4 people. Now, what hooked me to this story, and why I wanted to interview Brian, is that even though this case is quote-unquote solved, no one knows the motive. And it is very bizarre once you actually dive into the details and really think about that one fact. There was ample evidence to convict, including security camera footage, which includes Chad's pre-planning in the days leading up to the murders. Weapons were found, blood, all sorts of evidence, but the defendant himself sincerely seems to believe that he didn't do it. And those reasons and more are why it is so strange and fits this show. So without further ado, here is my interview with Brian O'Connell. Well, thank you so much for being on, Brian. And you told me about this case just what, 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago? It wasn't that long ago. And he's nodding, everybody. And
Yes.
it definitely intrigued me. I was like, "Ooh, that would make a good TV show." Which I have read your pilot script, by the way, and it is
Thank you.
it is it is
Thank you.
very awesome.
Yes, thank you so much. It was one of those things that just sort of popped up. As you know, I've been studying and writing about serial killers since I was about 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So several decades now. And this one just sort of popped across my radar on April 1st of 2019. The idea that it happened on April's Fool's Day is not lost on me. The
Wow.
irony of that. And then the person Chad Isaak, I'm about to tell you about right now, was arrested on April 4th. Um,
So you found out
I,
about this 3 days before he was captured?
I found out about it on April 4th when he was
Oh,
captured,
okay. Okay.
and
So
then working backwards, it was he was free for 3 days. So the basic breakdown, I want to give a lot of credit and a shout out to an investigative journalist by the name of Keith Darnay, Darnay, that lives in Mandan, North Dakota, where this crime took place. Mandan is just across a small river from Bismarck, North Dakota. It's sort of the North Dakota version of the Twin Cities, like Minnesota, St. Paul, or Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And his doggedness on the case has been very good, but also his restraint. He held a lot of things back that helped the make sure that the prosecution was fair and honest all throughout. That even I did not know. I had tips to everyone in the prosecution, the district attorney's office, the CBI, which is the state version of the FBI, and even to the defense attorneys. I went to the trial. We'll get to that later. I went from Los Angeles to North Dakota to go to the trial. And even in that moment where I was just like, everyone here is incredibly professional and well done, and kudos to them. So, with thanks to Keith Darnay, after 4.5 hours of deliberation over 2 days, a jury Friday, August 20th, 2021, found Washburn resident and chiropractor Chad Isaak guilty of the murders of four people at RJR Maintenance and Management in Mandan on April 1st, 2019. Isaak was also found guilty of burglary for unlawfully entering the RJR building while it was closed to the public, guilty of unlawful entry into William Cobb's RJR vehicle, and unauthorized use of the RJR vehicle, which was driven to Indigo signs shortly after the killings at RJR. The jury began deliberating the case around 2 p.m. Thursday and broke for the evening. 3 hours later, 6 men, 6 women resumed deliberations Friday morning, 8:30 a.m., came back with a verdict about 9:45 a.m., and then Judge Reich ordered the precedence investigation, so on and so forth. On April 1st, 2019, Chad Isaak, a chiropractor and a resident in Washburn, North Dakota, walked into RJR Maintenance, which is sort of a licensing company, real estate company, mobile homes, uh, factories, storage facilities, things like that. RJR co-owner Robert Fackler and employees William Cobb, Lois Cobb, and Adam Fuhrer were brutally killed in the shop and front office of the RJR building in Mandan in the early mornings of April 1st, 2019. And using video surveillance footage from the RJR and surrounding businesses, investigators were able to generate a description and images of the suspect and suspect vehicle, a white Ford F-150 pickup. Here's where it gets fun. From the videos, authorities testified that they were able to track the suspect vehicle from a McDonald's parking lot along Memorial Highway in Mandan, North Dakota, to the Missouri Bridge crossing in Washburn. The distinctive rust formation on the rear well of the suspect truck, coupled with other unique mud marks on the front bumper, the black trim with no liner on the pickup bed, and other identifying marks, caught the attention of McLean County Sheriff's Office's Lieutenant Justin Cromer in the Be on the Lookout, aka the BOLO, the bulletin, sort of like a all points bulletin that was sent to law enforcement on April 3rd and April 4th of 2019. And Cromer, the sheriff's office lieutenant, who lives in Washburn and was an occasional patient of Chad Isaak, immediately knew that Isaak drove a white Ford F-150 with very similar characteristics to the one shown in the Bolo
wow.
bulletins. And on April 14th, 2019, authorities stopped Isaak as he drove in Washburn and executed search warrants of his person, his truck, his home, and his downtown chiropractic business. Here's where the real fun stuff happens after this. Among the pieces of evidence seized, parts of a firearm in a plastic container inside the refrigerator freezer in Isaac's home. I know this from going for the trial. It was in a Tupperware that said Chad's veggie soup on it. He put his Christian name on the place where he was supposed to be hiding parts of a gun. An orange hoodie, a reversible face mask, black pants, black shoes, and were in the dryer, similar to the clothing worn by the suspect in the videos. A knife with a bent tip in Isaac's washing machine underneath some wet clothing. 9 shell casings and a sock in one of Isaac's home closet that had been shoved down underneath a bunch of dirty laundry. Dark gloves and other clothing very similar to those worn by the suspect in the videos. Some investigators also mentioned the smell of bleach when they entered Isaac's home. This is the most insane, weird detail for me. Investigators also found 16 pairs of size 12 Avia dark shoes at Isaac's business that were similar to those worn by the suspect in the videos, as well as a business appointment book with morning appointments scheduled for April 1st, 2019, that were moved to later times and dates. And Isaac told one of his patients that he had rescheduled, that he had a dental appointment that morning,
Right.
but authorities said they could not find any evidence that Isaac ever went to a dental office that day. In addition to the video from April 1st, an employee of Big O Tires in Mandan noticed something familiar about the suspect's movements in his business surveillance videos. When he reviewed videos from March 25th, exactly 1 week earlier, he found the same similarly dressed suspect going through the same motions as on April 1st. I know from going through the trial that they also have Chad Isaak's personal diary that says on March 25th, RJR, and then on April 1st, he wrote RJR again, even though he had no business appointment to be there whatsoever, which means that he intentionally did a week earlier, he intentionally did a dry run and then wrote both of those dates down in his own handwriting in his own personal day planner. I'm going to sort of leave it at this next paragraph and then we can dive in. When authorities matched surveillance video from Memorial Highway Business for April 1st and March 5th, 2019, at the same time as the murder, they found the videos, quote unquote, eerily similar, as one investigator put it. In the time the white Ford 150 arrived and parked at McDonald's, the clothing the suspect was wearing, the paths he walked to and from RJR, and the direction the white Ford F-150 followed leaving the McDonald's parking lot, one investigator testified the timing of both videos was within 30 seconds of each other for much of the movement, suggesting the suspect was rehearsing his plans for the following week. Chad Isaak was formally arrested on April 4th, 2019. The trial was held in August of 2021. He was found guilty after 2 days of deliberations in August of 21. And then on August 1st of this year, 2022, he took his own life in prison. So where do you want to start? Because there's a lot more moving pieces.
There are, and I have a couple of things I want to start with.
Please.
First,
yeah,
it's so weird because I love true crime and I love mysteries, but at the same time we have to dive into some pretty nasty shit, right? So
that's correct. Yes,
walk me through the details as best you can. With it, you can. You don't have to go too crazy with it.
Sure.
But it's a quadruple murder, which is already crazy. And I even read that I think in the last 20 years of Mandan, there hadn't even been that many murders combined. And here it is in one night.
Yeah. Yes.
But not just is it the amount of people, it is also the fact that they were shot and there were 100 stab wounds total.
Yes.
Of them.
And what I did not find out until I went to the trial. I went to the trial in August of 2021. Due to a previous trip I had planned to just do location scouting and to take pictures and sort of get a sense of the place. Through a combination of COVID delays and the slow moving wheels of justice, I happened to be there on the exact same weekend that if I just stayed one extra day, I could go to the courtroom on Monday morning, which I did. I was probably maybe 20 feet away from Chad Isaak, the defendant. If I had sat 2 feet to my left, I would have been on court TV right behind the prosecution.
Well, you should have done it, Brian. Come on.
The only reason I wasn't because the official photographer was sitting there, and I would have been blocking him. And I, as a director, as you know, Can't block the camera.
No,
Can't block the
can't
shot.
can't do that. Can't do that.
Yeah, that by going to that case that day, I got very lucky that the CBI, the state version of the FBI, was testifying that morning. And kudos to everyone for keeping tight-lipped about the case, especially in a small town like that. That was the first time that I became aware that it was a revolver and not an
Mm,
automatic. So when he shot 9 times, he reloaded to be able to do that. So yeah, it's multiple shootings, multiple stabbings
mhm.
with that same sort of industrial knife. To call it a knife is even sort of weird. It had like sort of a, it's more of like one of those mini handheld saws that you would take camping.
Oh.
Is the weapon that he shows. Yeah, so early morning, April 1st of 2019, out of business, moments before it was opening. There's a good sense that none of this makes sense, but there was a good sense that he may have been surprised
Mhm,
about the other two of the four actually being present.
mhm.
Uh, why no one really knows sort of like what, like who was the target, and if the
Well,
target was meant to be the owners of the business, why he did not elect to do that at their home instead of their place of business, where he could be elected to be surprised
mhm.
by extra people there. But that did not make him hesitate for very long. If you look at the video footage, he sees that there's more people there, and goes, "Carpe diem,"
Mhm.
and then continued on
Yeah,
with his.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll say for people listening that are
Mm,
curious about this case, and obviously we're just getting into it, so we'll get into it a lot more. But the videos are out there. I mean, you can
mm.
just YouTube and find a lot of the video and surveillance
Yes,
footage.
if you go to kxnet.com, Keith Darnay has a 1 year later sort of rolling diary of like, this is what I wrote about on the day that this happened.
Oh,
And you can,
nice,
if
nice.
you can follow the case with pictures and video and hyperlinks, just about as granular as you can stomach, to
Mhm.
be certain. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to mention this one thing, but I think we'll come back
Mhm.
to it. But you already mentioned
For sure.
he went in early in the morning, may have been surprised there were more people than he would have thought to be there that
Yes.
early. But also, motive is part of that. Motive is part of surprise, and motive
Mhm.
is no one knows. Still, like that's the thing that kind of has always intrigued me. A cer-
It's the number one thing that made me become obsessed with the case,
yeah,
and to this day it stays with me. There is no motive. No one has any idea why he did it. And I can say this from personally attending the trial and being there, reading his body language and stuff was really like the shoulder shrugs and the whispers. I am convinced that, forget the fact that he does not think he is guilty. Whether the issue of his guilt or not, I think is not in question. I don't, but as far as the why, the motive, I don't think his defense attorneys know why he did it. There is no history of bad blood personally with the
hmm
family. You think small
hmm
towns, things. There was a brief rumor that the owner or one of the co-owners of RJR Management had a bad divorce, and
yeah,
that
I read
maybe
that.
his ex-wife, maybe that was quickly debunked. Uh, she was the first one to be like, I would have done it myself. Very, that very sort of Midwest sort of
hmm
like, if I was going to do it, I would have done it. Um, there's no history. Like he once rented a trailer home from, but he was never evicted. He was never even late on rent. The idea that there is some sort of like, oh, this did this, there's no crime of passion. There's no crime of revenge here. Anything that we sort of think of what have been traditionally and historically laid out as motives in the court of law do not exist, much less the court of public opinion. I know just about as much about this case as the people that worked on it, probably a little less, but certain to be certain. But for the layman, I know just about everything that you can know about this case, and I have zero idea. And anyone who tells you they do is lying. Is
Yeah,
lying.
yeah. Okay, so he. So I'm still. you got my head
Sure.
spinning. So I apologize
Yeah.
if I'm jumping around a bit. But
No,
he
please,
goes in
please.
the morning, surprised or not.
Yes.
He pulls out a revolver, excuse me, and he
Yes.
shoots. And now, is everybody all the victims in the same room? Are they dispersed? Did he have to go
They're
through
all in the same
building?
room. It's like an open air small lobby. Imagine if RJ Maintenance is a large warehouse that they
Mhm.
have sort of like things about, and then off in the corner there would be a lobby, an office. smaller offices off to the side where there would be a desk and that kind of thing. So the whole thing took place because everyone is congregating in that small lobby space
Mhm.
just inside the open front door, where normal customers would come in. It is a very sort of small town of like, hey Chad, what's going on? What brings you in here so early this morning? Four people just being there. No one is even in the other parts of the building because it's so early in the morning. No one is doing like no one's doing the business part of the business yet.
Right. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not open. It's the beginning of the day. People are showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cup of coffee, shoot the shit.
So
Yeah.
he shoots him, even has
Yes.
to reload because it is a
Yes.
revolver, and then stabs them.
Multiple times. The type of stabbing that is traditionally has been known as either crimes of passion, or when it comes to what they refer to in when referring to serial killers of some sort of like the like what's the phrase that they use, the specific phrase, I want to get it right, the overwhelming amount, just the fact that overdoing it clearly meant that this was personal, but in a way that there is no motive to show what that personal stance would be.
Right.
Yeah, the overkill, that's the term I was looking for. The overkill is consistent with crimes of passion and or the types of serial murder, mass murder sprees where the bloodlust takes over and it's just impossible to keep count for the killer themselves of how many times.
Yeah,
there's not enough stabs to do it.
And this is, you said it was like a saw type hand implement.
Yeah, so sort of a mini, like a neon orange and black striped like handheld mini saw that someone might take on camping if you're trying to like cut down things, like cut off limbs for like firewood, for kindling.
Yeah.
It has a saw edge. That's why, and those knives tend to be, since they're mass produced, they tend to have thinner blades and cheaper metal. So that's when they found it, the tip had been bent because when you hit things like bone and the concrete beneath the body, has a tendency to curl the knife tip. Yeah,
of course. Okay, so he kills everybody in this crazy situation.
Yes.
He leaves and he steals one of their trucks. Is that correct? Or he gets
back to his truck? Yeah, initially he parks in a McDonald's that's I think it's like a 2-mile walk away.
Okay.
So he walks in. If you go to RJR, it's a small side street off of US Highway there. But it's like sort of that strip of highway where it's like not a lot of, it's definitely sort of the industrial area of the town, or sort of like, when I mean industrial, I don't mean factories and billowing steam pipes. I mean just more of like, oh, that's where the motor lodge sales park is. Like there's not a lot of things there. There's certainly not anything that's residential. So when you take that little side street off to get to RJR, the big building, storage sort of facility buildings on your left, and then there's a large parking lot, and then sort of another building like that off to your right, and then dead straight ahead of you, it's woods on one side of your vision, and then just open field. So he parked and hoofed it in, like specifically with the idea of like, I don't want my car and my license plate being there. And then so I think when he was leaving, you can see from the video footage that he's sort of peeking out, trying to figure out what's the next thing, and then that's where he steals one of the company cars, the RJR maintenance company cars, and then drives that to a different place. I guess he just didn't feel safe enough, or didn't feel like he had enough time to double back the way he had clearly worked out, and then dumped that car and then hoofed it back to his car at the McDonald's there.
Got it. Okay, and then 3 days later, he's captured.
Yes.
I guess just kind of fill in that hole, and you already did a little bit of it in the synopsis you gave, but what kind of interesting things were found? And you talked about the guy that was a client of Chad's who went to his chiropractor practice. Is that
chiropractor practice. Sheriff's office lieutenant recognized and said, "Hey, that's my chiropractor's car," because there's a very distinct rust pattern. If you look at the pictures, you go, yeah, that is so distinct in the way like a birthmark would be on a human. that's a rust pattern that could be on the car, and also the other defining marks. Now, again, when I was physically at the trial, that's when they were going over physical evidence, so I got to see a lot of photography, crime scene photography they had taken of that white truck, that Ford F-150 of his. And I mean, it from that day of April 4th, where they kept the chain of evidence correct and did everything, because that's what the defense tried to argue, that there's a lot of chain of evidence leaks, and I'm like, I don't think so, man, because I would have heard about it. There is blood all over that car. And when I mean blood all over that car, I mean like he literally got into that car still covered in his victim's bloods, touching it. The most chilling one for me is where he has clearly touched it and put on his seatbelt, and then taken a moment to take a 1 liter bottle of soda that had been already opened, and he opened it up. So there's blood on the soda bottle,
yeah,
and the soda cap. And he clearly took a big old gulp before he then took the car and put it in park and drove away. Like there that blood is everywhere, all over that car, and to the point where like it would be a bigger miracle and a bigger mystery for someone to plant that blood in such a way in his vehicle versus what is most likely true.
That's a good point, because a lot of times, especially the cases that intrigue me, there's always like evidence, but it's evidence that doesn't really connect to anything else, so it makes your mind wander and you think of conspiracies and connections and did police plant it. But it sounds like all of this kind of lines up. Like it doesn't seem like something that could have been planted or could be somebody else, because it's everything kind of connects in this perfect little line.
I think one of the main reasons why this case has been so for lack of, I don't want to say important, but like the reason why it has stuck to me for as long as it has, and writing a television series around it, and physically buying a plane ticket and going there and going to the trial and doing all the location scouting and all that, is because I am sort of fascinated overall as an artist. I'm sort of fascinated with the banality of evil. That the idea that as comforting as the idea of monsters or conspiracy theories, or this like, how far deep does this go? For a lot of times, the most horrific things that human beings are capable of doing to each other and do to each other really come from just the smallest places. And that's why they become even more horrifying, because there is no reasoning behind them. So the banality of evil, and then to the idea of, like I say, blood sex, but also when they viewed his house 3 days later, he didn't take off. He didn't leave town. He clearly was. I don't want to say clearly, because nothing is clear in this thing, but I think it stands to reason that he thought he had gotten away with it, because this is 3 days later. But he's taking the appropriate steps, but also he's doing them in such a weirdly haphazard way that it would almost be impossible. It beggars the imagination that someone, if the argument was made that someone was framing him, well, then I don't know why they would keep gun parts from the gun that was used, as well as the Walmart receipt from the gun that was used, in a Tupperware that says Chad's veggie soup on it, and put it in his own freezer. I don't know why the same clothing and the knife and bleach were found wet in the dryer in his house. 9 bullet casings from the same type of revolver shoved in a sock with his DNA on it. It's his sock, shoved into a sock, shoved into the bottom of dirty laundry at the bottom of the closet in his bedroom. That's a Machiavellian person who would be able to think of all that, and therefore to frame a different person as if they did not do that. My thing is always, I always sort of come down to, I'm like, the only way that would be possible for someone to frame him in such a way is that person had to be walking right behind him in all the videos. It wouldn't match up any other way, right?
So let me take a pause and sort of information about the case, and just go to you for a moment. So tell me when you first came across this, and then even like the I mean, you went over it a little bit, but I love the idea. I just love that you were actually able to go to the trial for a bit.
I was flabbergasted that I worked out that way.
Yeah. So how did you first come across it?
Randomly, through a website. It might have been Imager.
Mm-hmm.
imgur.com.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I find that social media, especially nowadays, and especially in 2019, where I found I was like, I have to get off Facebook, I have to get off Instagram, I have to get off Twitter. The news headlines are just too daunting. I'm being overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll go to Wikipedia and look up production, old movie production notes of oh, I didn't know that, like, for example, like, oh, I didn't know the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels was actually a remake of a movie with David Niven and Marlon Brando, and it was meant to be a starring vehicle for Mick Jagger and David Bowie to
Mm-hmm.
do something, and then they turned it down, and then it went through a couple different people, and ended up being Steve Martin and Michael Caine. And there's even a quote from Bowie going like, "We actually kind of regretted it because we thought it might have turned out quite well, and then we saw the movie and we went, oh, missed opportunity." So I'll go to places like that to sort of like heal myself and sort of
Mm-hmm.
unplug from the horror machine. And Imager is one of that because have people. It has all the pictures and all sort of the memes of Reddit, but without being Reddit, without
Right,
being
right.
sort of
With all the
also the
evil that comes with
toxicity.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the toxicity that's there. And so there's usually a lot of kitties and all that. And every once in a while, is you just I do most. I just go like, what's most viral? What's I'm not going in user sub and just come through. And I think I probably found it through there. I
Yeah,
have like 2,000 hyperlinks about the trial now, so
yeah.
I'm hesitant to go back and try and find out like where I found out
Mm-hmm.
about that. And then I saw that and went, huh, that's interesting. And I usually have like a Google hyperlink where or bookmark where I'll be like potential movie TV slash
Mm-hmm.
film ideas or like whatever. And then for whatever reason, I just went, there's something here. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. You know what? I'm gonna take one extra step. I'm gonna make a Google alert for Mandan, North Dakota, and I don't even have to put Chad Isaak because Mandan is a small enough town, and I'm from a small town in High Point, North Carolina, but this is even smaller town. I'm confident if I just put Mandan, North Dakota as a Google alert, this is going to be a big story.
Yep.
And then for the next couple days, of course, as they're looking for people, they're trying to find suspects, they're trying to find answers, they're interviewing people, and it just keeps going. So for those from April 1st, 2019 to April 4th, when he was captured, I like every day, multiple times a day, I would be getting Google alerts in my inbox, and I'd read on it. I go like, God, this is so weird. This is so weird. What is this? And then once they found him, and then once they sort of broke down who he was, and that what they were allowed, obviously what the press was the local press was allowed to print about him. Just learning about him, I was like, this makes no sense. This makes no sense. He didn't get into a fight with this guy. All this, my redneck brains just started going like, okay, did he get in a fight with this guy a couple days ago? Like, oh, was there some
Yep.
sort of weird love affair?
Mm-hmm.
Was there
Mm-hmm.
was there, oh, this guy got evicted from back in the day from when he was living a different place and he's been holding on to this. The way that like, they talk about in the movie Hoffa, like Jimmy Hoffa
Yeah.
always says,
Yeah.
it's the imagined hurt. You always have to be aware of the guy, of the imagined hurt, of like the thing that you didn't think was a big deal, or you're like, or like a quick handshake, or like, yeah, I'll talk to you later, and that to you means nothing. But that guy's going home every night, wide open, staring at the ceiling, going like, just thinking
Exactly.
about it
Yeah.
over and over. Like, that's not
Yeah.
good. Like, there's none of that. There's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
The best that I can come up with, to be perfectly honest, and this is just a theory, because again, from his body language, every time the CBI guys were, he would just Chad Isaak would roll his eyes and like make notes. He would lean over and whisper stuff like he did not think he did it. He would every piece of information that came out, like, yeah, we find the 9 bullet
Wow.
shells in the bomb. He was like, oh, no way, didn't happen. I'm just like, okay. So honestly, the only theory that I have come up with, and this is just a theory. So I found an article, an interview with Chad Isaak. The reason why he became a chiropractor is that he played high school football and he got a really bad neck and back injury. And this is from an interview that he did in a local Washburn newspaper. I only have a screen grab of it. I can't even find the interview anymore. I just found the screen grab
Wow.
of the article. And he talked about how he went to every doctor you could think of, did everything like hypnosis, nothing worked. And then someone finally just said, hey, you should go to a chiropractor. Why he hadn't thought of that before, I have no idea. It's his narrative. And obviously he is a unreliable narrator, but from this newspaper article, I would have to imagine this is pre whenever he decided he was going to do this, because this was from several years prior to even the murders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he said, I went to the chiropractor, and then within 20 minutes, I felt demonstrably better, like better than I'd ever had, that nothing else had worked. And then finally, I felt like I could. It was like, I need to do this. I need to dedicate myself to becoming a chiropractor so that I can also bring help to people who are in chronic pain the way that I was, and which is a outrageously ironic when you consider, like, I'm
That's
going
what
to
I
make
was
it my
about to
life's
say.
mission. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to make it my life's mission to take away people's pain, and then turn around and give a lot of people the worst pain imaginable,
Mm-hmm.
which is the loss of a loved one in a high profile, immediate case like this.
Mm-hmm.
So my personal theory is, and again, this goes back to the banality of evil. There are certain places where we know so little about nature versus nurture versus upbringing versus religious upbringing, for all those different little pieces together, and we know so little about the short and long-term effects of what we know as CTE, which
Mm-hmm.
lots of professional football players have suffered
Yep.
from, and in recent years. Jovan Belcher, I believe I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
his name correctly, the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs that killed his family members,
Yeah. Yeah.
showed up in the parking lot and then killed himself in front of head coach Andy Reid and a few of the other coaches. Someone like Junior
Say
Seau,
Al. Yeah.
yeah, of course, we just people snap and then just lose all consciousness. Uh, and then on down the line of all
Mm-hmm.
the Greg
Mm-hmm.
Hardys and all the different people, you have the domestic abuse and violence that everyone around them says, like, that's not who that person is. I've
Mm-hmm.
never seen that person be like that. And so for me, there's a small theory of, like, you know what, this road may lead back to a question of CTE, of someone who suffered from long-term chronic physical and mental pain. And then somewhere, God, wouldn't it be crazy if the physical pain had been taken away, and for some reason, whatever little
Yep.
switch got
Yeah.
switched here and that, and then slowly but surely, and then also maybe he had never been cured of his physical pain. Would he have not also had these same thoughts and for lack of a better term, call to do this sort of violence and do this sort of rage, but he would be physically incapable of doing it? Like, those little pieces is what I find fascinating about the banality of evil. Most of the time, I believe that there is no good reason. There is no aha moment. Life is not life is not a story that where the things in the first act have to pay off in the third act
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
things are just sad and they just
Yeah.
end. And those are the sort of stories that I get interested about, and then go, okay, is there a way to keep this cinematic based on the banality of its evil, or do you have to do a little bit of a goosing to make it
Yeah.
just believable? There's a reason why when I wrote Strange Magic, which is the title of the pilot, I had the working title was Mandan, but then I wanted to change it because I was like,
Yeah.
that is not fair to the people there. I do not want to use this as a way to continue that pain for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I so out of respect for them, I wanted to add the supernatural elements to it that I did, but
Mm.
also mostly I had to add the supernatural elements because if I tried to do it just as a straight true crime, like The Killing, or maybe the first season of Fargo,
Yep. Yep.
the studio notes, the network executive notes I would get back, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. That wouldn't try that the trial wouldn't happen that way. I'm like, but it did, and it
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I showed it. I showed it to a good friend. I'll tell you off camera who it is because I want to out them. But we have a mutual friend who is not a practicing attorney, but did go to law school, did graduate, works in a law firm, and I just sent him the article on the day that Chad Isaak was found guilty. I was like, hey, by the way, this is that thing I've been working on for a couple, because he was like, what the hell are you doing in North Dakota, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I almost gave him away by doing the impression, but I caught myself. Uh, I sent him that, and within 2 minutes, he sent me back a message that said, "This is the dumbest criminal I've ever heard of in my life." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why spookiness is involved now, because every executive would be like,
Yeah.
there is no criminal that's that
Yeah.
dumb or does something that is just that out of the blue,
Yeah.
and make it make narrative sense." So yeah,
Exactly, and that's why, honestly, it's perfect for my podcast, because the strangeness of it, why this wouldn't make a straight up good movie by itself,
yeah,
is why I think it's a worthy, just a conversation, because it is so bizarre. And part
yeah,
of what you're talking about with CTE as a theory, I don't know enough about it, so I don't mean this as like a way to debunk that theory. I mean it as a way
for
to
sure.
literally question it. But like the premeditation, because he was practicing this and everything was minute
Yeah,
by minute, second by second planned ahead. but there's no motive for why he's targeting
Mm-mm.
RJR. There's no reason why he's targeting the people there, but yet it's so premeditated that I'm like, is CTE one of those things that can affect your thought process that with that great attention to detail over a length of time that's consistent for the amount of
Yeah.
days that premeditated it? And it might be. I don't know. I literally just don't know. That's why I'm
There's
asking.
well, there's lots of different. Like I mentioned, the case of the Kansas City Chiefs tight end who
Mhm.
Henry Pivot, and then Junior Seau who turned the gun on himself.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys with CTE, if you want to talk about the idea of premeditation and all that, that's one of the reasons why it's such a dangerous illness and why it's being studied so hard for something that is, the NFL is such a huge part of the
Yes.
Americana.
Yes.
Even if you don't like football or don't watch professional or college football, it's ingrained into like the American experience. It's
Mhm.
because you'll have a lot of these guys who are aware of what they're going through, and then when they take their own lives, they shoot themselves in the chest, not their head, so their brains can be studied by science afterwards because they
Yeah.
are aware of the nightmares and the demons that they're having and going
Oh
on, and
man.
that they're, yeah, I mean, literally the idea of like I'm a professional quarterback that is retired and I have multiple I'm in the Hall of Fame and all that. And I walk you hear these heartbreaking stories of like I walk into the kitchen and I don't know why I walked in the kitchen and I've been standing there for an hour and my wife comes in and says, "What are you doing here?" And I scream and I punch the wall next to her face. And then she's, God bless her, she is aware of it. And then like multiple hours come later, it's like, oh, I was thinking about getting a glass of water, and I thought, where did I put my keys? And then the rest of the day is
Yeah.
lost. The
Yeah.
rest of the day is gone. You have professional wrestlers, the most famous one of Chris Benoit, unfortunately, who had lots of very difficult CTA. The professional surgeons, when they did his autopsy, that said that he basically had the brain of an 80-year-old man,
Oh my
but he was in
goodness.
his mid 40s.
Yeah.
He was a family annihilator. He killed his family. Spent several days trying to like he canceled on a pay-per-view. He was supposed. I have a friend who was supposed to wrestle him that night and win the ECW heavyweight championship
Oh
from Chris
wow.
Benoit, but he no showed on Sunday night. They found his body and the body of his wife and his child um, on Monday morning or Monday afternoon. Monday Night Raw was live on the USA channel. They had a big like 21 bell salute, and they dedicated the whole 3 hours to his memory on that. And by the next day is when everyone else found out, oh
Oof.
no, he killed them and then killed himself.
Oof.
But they have shown that throughout that from the people that he did call, certain other things he did, certain his search engine used from the computer that was in the house, like he had made attempts to try and cover it up, but at what point was he aware of what he had even done and why? So there's a lot of that's the hard part is like I don't disagree with you that CTE is a very sort of like out there theory because we know so little of it, and from person to person there's such a different
It can
way
be
that people
different.
deal with it.
But
And sometimes it could take years, and
yeah.
sometimes it could be while they're still in their playing days. Nobody knows about what
Yeah. I mean,
concussions do
and
to a
hey, that
person.
maybe that's why it's actually a valid theory to have because the only theory I have, and I was going to save some theories for the end, but we're already doing it, so I'm just going to jump
Please,
in.
please, please.
One of the things I thought of is, oh god, now I'm forgetting their names. It's a famous story of early 20th century. These two like college kids that thought they were smarter than everybody else. They're like, we're going to make the perfect murder and no one's going to catch us. And they've made a million
I
movies and shows and
I
whatever
know
else.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Then I think I have that hyperlinked as
yeah.
well.
And I can't
Yeah,
believe I'm forgetting their
that's
names
okay.
right now. Leopold and Loeb.
Leopold
That's
and Loeb,
yeah,
yeah, they've made several stories about that.
yeah,
Yeah, they were
and
they were basically just bored aristocrats
yeah,
for anything. Yeah,
they thought they were smarter than everybody else. There's a
mm-hmm.
narcissistic element to
Yeah,
them, and so part of me was thinking, I wonder if there's a world or a place. And
mm-hmm.
I just wanted to read enough about this case to have
Mm-hmm.
educated questions, so I didn't dive into it very
Yeah,
deeply. But
sure.
I was like, I wonder if there's just an element of this guy where he's like, I just want to do it, and I think I can do it. And
You
that
know
to
what?
me is so scary. It was like that thinking.
I don't. That's funny that you say that because I also have a secondary theory that kind of
Mhm.
not about this, but sort of in general that sort of plays into that together. Because first off, the idea of that Leopold and Loeb
Mhm.
uh, theory or a CTE theory aren't mutually exclusive.
That's
Both of
true.
those can be
Yeah.
occurring at the same
Yeah.
time, and both of them can be concerning at the same time because one led to the other, or absolutely independent of each other.
Yeah.
One was just like, oh man, I've got this chocolate in my peanut butter now, for lack of a better term, right? And not to be flippant about it, real people died,
Uh,
but also it does sort of lead up to I have a sort of a general theory because I'm from a small town in North
mhm.
Carolina. I've been around this kind of stuff, and he did live in a trailer park early on. He
Yes.
lived in a
Yes.
trailer that was owned by RJR Maintenance, and
Right.
that was one of the first places I went to. I was like, was he evicted? Like, no, he didn't evicted. He was never late on his rent. From what I can tell, he never had any issues with the place,
Hmm.
management, or even just neighbors. And he had moved out of there and moved on up because through his chiropractor business, several years passed. So if that was, it had to be the most minuscule of a thing. And if that guy held on to a something like that for so long, if he was the type of
Yeah.
person that was so petty about that, then that, I feel like there'd be a slew of other stories of pettiness. But I do have what I call the trailer park theory. This is a Brian James O'Connell individual theory. Is that the reason why you find so much hopelessness in trailer parks, a reason why you find so much heart disease, and why you find so much drink alcoholism, bad foods, aside from the fact that they're normally in food deserts. But the reason why people there do so much bed swapping and so much fist fighting and so much like I'm cheating on your wife and you're cheating on mine and my
Hmm.
sister on that, and then the sort of the nihilism that's going on, it's because these are people without any hope. They
Hmm.
don't have anything interesting going on in their lives. They don't have anything important going on in their lives, and they know it. So therefore, much like a soap opera, they have to manufacture the drama to have importance in their
Hmm.
day-to-day life, because otherwise it would be too crushing. And you factor in on top of that, like, it's not really even an IQ thing, because if you could be a genius, you could have 175 IQ and be stuck in a trailer park because that's the crushing weight of poverty. And being aware of it, I don't know if being aware of it or being ignorant enough of what is happening is a which one is a
Worse.
worse
Yeah.
fate.
Yeah.
So there is a possibility too as well that he very well could have said, like, is this all my life is? I didn't get to play college football like I wanted to. I'm a chiropractor and I thought I was going to help a bunch of people, but really I'm just sort of like, I'm like a low level, not even a dentist, and I'm just the drudgery of it. It is absolutely possible
Hmm.
that he just went, what if I could? And then
Yeah.
who would it be? Where's the perfect? And because again, the malice of forethought, to use the technical term for murder, the legal technical term, the malice of forethought is there. You dress the same way, you drive the same car, you park in the same place, to the point where the March 25th and then the April 1st, the March 25th run through and the April 1st committing of the act can be almost matched up to the second by
Hmm.
30-second window. That means he was doing that intentionally. He was trying to make it as close to the day of making the run through as close to as the day of, to even to the point of writing it down in a day planner with your name and address in it. Baffling, baffling.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is.
So bizarre. It's so bizarre.
So
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
possible. It could be a Leopold Loeb thing. Can I get away with it? Can I?
Yeah.
Right?
But in
Yeah.
that case, and now I'm just thinking about out loud about it. But in that case,
Sure.
they thought they were so smart that they thought they were able to cover things up. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Chad Isaak, it doesn't seem like he tried to cover anything up, or if
Well,
he just had
that's the
no.
frustration.
Yeah.
There are certain places where it's like, man, the willpower. You and I are writers, so we know how, like, the old joke is like, uh, no house has ever been cleaner than a writer on a deadline, right? Find any find any excuse to do anything in the world
Yep. Yep.
versus like then
Yep.
actually write.
Paint the
Um,
living room, which I did this weekend
yeah,
instead of doing some other writing. So yes, I
exactly.
totally understand.
And so to think of the willpower and the intestinal fortitude it would take to meticulously measure something out like that, but then on the flip side of, like, I don't know if you can curse on this podcast or not,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
yeah, great. Then I'll just do the one. We'll keep it PG-13. This is my one F bomb. To the willpower, the intestinal fortitude to make all those trips, to measure it down to within the minute, and then on the flip side of that, if there was an intended target and he was therefore actually surprised about the other, go to his fucking house where only he's going to be. You moron. If there was, that's why, again, it's like there is no motive, there is no reasoning. I don't think he knows. Certainly his defense attorneys don't know, and they should know more than anyone else. I don't even think the victims knew in that moment. There's nothing to say that
Yeah.
he even said anything or that there was
Yeah.
any attempt to, like, run or find with it. Like, people, he came in and it happened to the point of, like, then why would you just not go? to Mr. RJR's home
Hmm.
before he even left for the business. Why
Yeah.
would what you would think there's certainly less potentiality of closed circuit public
Yeah.
security cameras
Yeah.
in whatever neighborhood they're in,
Yeah.
even if that person lives in a successful neighborhood. April 2019, I don't know how widespread ring door cams are in even the tawniest places of Mandan, North
E-
Dakota. I mean, I went to just to go back for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, I physically went to the trailer park that Chad Isaak lived in
Hmm.
when he was living, like to the exact location. I won't give out. The poor people living there now don't need looky loos. I'm sure they have enough of that already. So I'm not going to add to
Yeah.
that by giving the actual address. But I went there physically, and boy, dude, I did the whole loop through the whole place. Depressing,
Hmm.
depressing. I've been in a lot of trailer parks, but I haven't. There's few I've been in that are gnarlier than that one. Where I
Oh
was just
wow.
like, my God. But if he made it out of that,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
what? To what end? To what end? It's crazy. There's for every time this guy looks like the Pink Panther, and I mean like the movie, like the world's greatest
Hmm.
cat burglar. There's another moment where it's just like this guy should be outside of a 7-Eleven playing with his own doo-doo. Like I don't understand
Yeah.
the dichotomy of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you got to go to the trial. Hey, how many days of the
Mhm.
trial did you go to? Just one or multiple?
I flew into Mandan. I flew into Bismarck. Rented a car on Friday. Drove in. Stayed at a small hotel for Friday night and Saturday night. Liz came up and met me on Sunday night. We sort of stayed at a nicer place in Bismarck. I was trying to go for the authentic experience, and I don't think she was interested in the authentic dirtbag experience that I was in. And since she was making the trip up, I was like, okay, well let's make it like sort of a road trip. So we went Monday morning. They couldn't have been nicer. No one asked us what we were doing there. No one asked us why we were there. As long as we didn't have cell phones on us, and as long as we were wearing a mask, we just walked in. We like walked in and sat in the trial, and so we were there until we went in early Monday morning, and we sat through two CBIs testifying, two of
Okay.
the officers, and then we left. They took their lunch break around 1. We left. We had lunch, and then we started on in hindsight, the weirdest thing of all, we went on sort of an unofficial media case slash murder road trip because
Yeah.
we went to Deadwood, we went to Dodge City, we went
Oh
to
wow.
Denver, John Benet Ramsey, we
Yeah.
went to Oklahoma City with the Oklahoma City bombing, and we went to Wyoming, Devil's Rock, Devil's Rock, I
Mm.
think it is. We went to Mount Rushmore, so there's Abraham
Yeah.
Lincoln's assassination, and we ended in Dallas. The last thing we did in Dallas before hanging out with a friend of ours who lives there. Last thing we did in Dallas is we went to obviously the book depository of
Yeah.
the
Yeah. For
Knoll
JFK. Yeah.
from Honey. So like yeah, we went there. I got to do one day. If I was by myself, I would have stayed the whole week because we
Mm-hmm.
made it. We were in a locker room in Kansas. The locker room. We were in a hotel room in I believe it was Kansas City. I know for a fact that the way I remember this is the day that they came back and found him guilty on all counts is because we watched it on court TV, and then I flipped over to TNT to watch CM Punk make his first appearance on wrestling television for the first time in 7 years. That's the night that he came back and they played Cult of
Yeah.
Personality and all that. So that was the day I was like, yep, they found him guilty. Well, okay. Now they're just going back to the talking head. It's 3 minutes until AEW Dynamite starts, so it's a
Yeah.
Wednesday. I'll put it back on, and then and then CM Punk walks out, and then we all lose our minds. So that's how I remember
That's
where I
amazing
was.
detail. I love it.
Yeah,
And the
where I
jury
found
only
out
deliberated. It was 4.5 hours, is what I read. Is that correct?
over 2 days,
Two
which means
days.
if they just didn't have to by law
Yeah.
release them by the end of the day,
Absolutely.
they would have absolutely found him guilty. And that
I,
I think from what I can tell, I think they were deliberating. I know they asked for one. They asked one question. You know how it is. Like they'll go to the bailiff
mhm.
and you write down a question. And like
Yep.
they wanted just like one piece of instruction of like we want to be clear on this
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
of the law before they did. But like I can't imagine anyone in that room. And it was a good jury. It was a mix of men and women. Like say 6 men, six
Hmm.
women. Every social strata. Like I sat there and looked and said, if this was I know sounds like hyperbole and it sounds like I'm just sort of pimping my own book or pimping my own project, but I'm like, I did. There was a moment where I looked at the jury and I went, you know what? If this was a jury, if I was on trial and this was my jury, I would feel good about this.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd feel like I'm being fair. There's nothing.
Hmm.
There's no one there where I was just like, and they took it seriously. No one was napping. Everyone was taking notes.
Hmm.
Everyone was filled with the gravity of that moment. I was like, this is a well picked jury of good, decent human beings doing their civic
Their
duty to
duty.
make
Yeah.
sure that justice is served. So and yeah, but I was like, if it was the only reason it was 2 days is because they had to stop. That's
Yeah.
coming back.
Yeah, that's one of the the other bizarre elements of this, because as we talk about it, it does seem like all the evidence is pointing in Chad's direction, right?
Yeah.
And yet there's always going to be questions about things like this,
Mm-hmm.
and it, from what I've read, his defense, it looks like they took that tactic of like it was rushed.
Yeah.
It's everybody's got white trucks up here, so in the surveillance footage, how can we
Yeah.
certainly be sure? And obviously you've already mentioned the rust marks that kind of tie it to him, but
Yeah.
was there anything else about the defense's case that stood out to you as like, oh, like, or anything that made you question, or were you always just like, oh god, this is weird because he obviously did it but there's no motive?
I think I will say this, not to out her, because my girlfriend is a lawyer. She does
Mm-hmm.
criminal law. And to her credit, the he had a few lawyers, but sort of the main lawyer was an older gentleman, sort of like a silver fox hair. And very early on, like I think like within 5 minutes of us sitting there, she either said it to me or she told me afterwards that she knew this within 5 minutes of sitting there. She's like, "That is a very good lawyer."
Oh
If I
wow.
was on trial, if I was on her
Mm-hmm.
exact lines were, "If I was on trial for murder, that is the lawyer I would want him doing my case." And I'm like, no higher compliment, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I think what stuck out to me, yeah, because they were arguing the rush. The old caveat, and I learned this from her too. The old caveat is if the law is on your side, bang the law.
Mm-hmm.
If the facts are on your side, bang the facts. If neither the law or the facts on your side, bang the table. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the axiom. And while they certainly weren't banging the table, they were sort of making the idea of like they were very calmly and very professionally saying this was rushed. They weren't trying to
Mm-hmm.
say that anyone had made a mistake or
Yeah.
that they were wrong or they were bad at their jobs. The idea that there hadn't been enough time to investigate other possible assailants or that. But
Mm-hmm.
the one thing I noticed that they did not make any pushback on, even though it was mentioned and had been mentioned several times, and maybe they brought this up on another day that I was not there. But one of the main things in those videos, and for those of you listening, they're going to go back and do the deep dive. What had been said early and often through all the reporting I had heard, not only from this lovely gentleman that I've been, Keith, but also Blake Nicholson, who wrote the very first day. There's several. I don't want to name drop everybody, but like everyone who worked on this trial, journalist wise, was very good. Um, he has a very unique gait. He has a very specific way of walking, and so is it possible? Yeah, that there was someone else. Sure, but if that someone else was there a week prior doing exactly all the same things that this other guy that we're saying to it, okay, but then that guy is the greatest mimic I've ever seen in my life. That guy should be on Saturday Night Live for how good his impressions are. Because to do, and I'm a mimic by trade in comedy. Like I can do an impression of half the people at iOS, the comedy theater that you and I performed at for years and years. Because if I'm around you for 10 minutes and you're my friend, I can do an impression of you. This guy's walk is so specific that the second I did it, you would know who I'm doing. Like I do a very good one of the things I do best is my Eric Honeycutt walk is spot on. I do it and you go, that's Eric Honeycutt. This would have to be the same guy. It'd have to be that level. And that's the piece that I never saw them bring up. And I think that's where the defense knew that they couldn't
They couldn't.
even
Yeah, yeah.
don't bring it up, don't fight it because it's dead set, because all you do is open the door for the prosecution to play that tape over and over again and say, look how the person on the video walks. Do you know anyone else in your life that walks that way? If someone were to walk that way, what do you think the chances are that a second person in your life also walked that way? it's like doing a Jack Nicholson or a Christopher Walken impression. It's like, really? You know two people that talk like Christopher Walken?
Exactly like
I
that. Yeah.
doubt it. I
I
doubt it.
I'm so glad you brought up the walk because I completely forgot about it because that's one of the things you first told me about this story. You told me about the surveillance footage that caught him, the very unique, specific kind of walk and gait that this guy had that was
Yeah.
caught and how precise the sort of pre-planning was to what happened. And I completely forgot about the walk, and I was fascinated by that when you first told me. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that back up.
At least, yeah, at least Spock with the goatee, evil Spock, acts different. This is like watching a Goofy movie, and then halfway through, a new person shows up, and they're like, "Oh no, that's Jeff." And I'm like, "Well, that guy acts exactly the way that Goofy the dog acts." So I'm very confused about who
Yeah,
Jeff
yeah.
is. Right? bad screenwriting, so to speak. Which is again, that's why I had to add in like the sort of Norse mythology and supernatural stuff to my pilot, because otherwise everyone would be like, this doesn't make any sense and I can't do it. And I'm like, yeah, but I have to have something to show as a professional filmmaker, I have to have something to show for the past 2019 to 2020, 21, 22. It's August of 2022. We have passed April of 22. This is 4 years of my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been studying this.
What
else am I going to do with it? If I was still making music, I would write a song about it. Right?
Absolutely. So you're an artist. You create. I do want to tell everybody because I didn't know how much you want to talk about your script, and I don't want to dive into it because it's a pilot script.
No.
Read it. But I do want to mention, I really, really enjoyed it. I mean that very sincerely.
Thank you. Must be. I mean, it's your podcast. You wouldn't say it on there if you're going to. It's true.
No, but one of the things that I do think is interesting, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, but just to reiterate, it really is just inspired by the events. It is definitely not about this, and so I just wanted to kind of reiterate that for anybody interested in following up, or even hopefully one day seeing this as a show.
Yeah,
and like you said with the title and like changing it, I really respect that because you did take this turn with it that I think is important. Now,
I mean, it's respect for the families, it's respect for the victims' memories, and also it's and I made it very clear to anyone that I talked to up there that I had to say the way I was up there. I didn't go into places and under false pretenses. If I took pictures of exteriors. I didn't infect anyone's lives. In a small town like that, everyone's attached personally and emotionally to a thing like that. The last thing I would ever want to do is exploit that. And so I made it very clear, not only to when I did have to talk to people, or when I talk to people about it like this, I'm like, I am not an investigative journalist. I am not, and therefore, since I am not, I knew that I had to, again, have it be a launching point and inspire off, because I can't write about this the way that David Simon writes about Baltimore, right? Because he's from there and he was a journalist. He has the journalistic ethics and training, more specifically the training, journalism school. I went to film school. I didn't go to journalism school. And so, this is something that became important to me, and out of respect for their memories and respect for the real people that passed away. I'm from Little Chicago. It's the 34th, we're the High Point is the 259th largest city in America, but we're currently number 34 in murders per capita. So I've been around it my whole life. I don't want that. So I said, this is a launching off point. So once you get past the sort of first act, it's really not about that anymore, because I didn't want to be salacious and I didn't want to be inconsiderate.
It's such an interesting story, and you really used the questions around the motive and sort of the mental state of the person. It's you use that as sort of an inspiration to go somewhere, and it was great.
Thank you. Real quick, I just said there is a line in there that I get lots of feedback, and I'm waiting for your notes as well. I'll take notes for everybody, but especially you, baby. With you are a very accomplished filmmaker, and I would respect your notes. There's a specific line where as the sheriff and his deputy are talking outside of the interview room, and they go like, what do you think that line about the blood, what do you think that was all about? He's like, I don't know, maybe he wants to juggle it or something. I can't tell you how many people have asked me to change that line because it didn't make sense, and I'm just like, no, that's the point. It makes so little sense that the idea of juggling liquid is more plausible than whatever that guy, I also changed the name. The character's name is Chris Gravely. It's not Chad Isaak in the novel. He was like, I don't know. They're like, you can't really juggle blood, so you could probably change that. I'm like, no, buddy, that is the point.
That's the point. That's the point of the line.
You're meant to bump on that line. Like, what do you think he wants to do with the blood? I don't know. Juggle it. let me ask one thing. I want to ask. I need to know, is this episode going to be right after the August Norman episode? Because there's something I would love about the idea of someone who writes stories and narratives so well, and everything makes sense, and then it's followed by this one that makes zero sense whatsoever.
It is not. There's some episodes. There's
Ah,
episodes in between, but
but
we will tell people to listen to. Let's see, what order should they go in? Should they go?
it's a good double feature.
Yeah.
Listen to August first. Listen
Yeah.
to Mr. Norman first.
Absolutely.
A good friend of ours.
Yeah.
Did he do it under August Norman? Did he do it under his shoot name?
He did it under Norm Thoming, and but we talked about August Norman as his, his nom.
I tried. Do you know the terminology work and shoot from professional wrestling?
I don't, but I was able to kind of deduce what it was.
Yeah, from context clues.
Yeah.
So I usually don't want to break kayfabe. I don't want to blow up anyone's spot. So like Randy the Macho Man Savage's shoot name, because Randy the Macho Man Savage is the gimmick. His shoot name is Randy Poffo, right? So it's like, but no one's selling out Madison Square Garden to go see Randy Poffo. So
no, I don't think so. I do have to say you should be proud of this. Is my first episode with a lot of wrestling references. So
excellent.
Get that down. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So Mr. Chad Isaak, who I kept whenever I was Googling him the last 2 days, I'd accidentally search for Chris Isaak, and
it's also spelled differently.
Yeah.
It's also spelled differently, which is even more.
I didn't actually even notice that.
Isaak
yep.
is Chad Isaak, and then Chris Issa. C, right? Yeah,
maybe.
It's two. I know it's Issak for Chris Isaak, the musician. Yeah, it's 2 A's. It took me about 6 months before I went, oh my God, I've been writing this wrong the whole time in all my notes. Find and replace.
No, but to wrap up some of the stuff here, he's convicted. I mean, this is a good place where we can kind of go to, because this is very recent. He has committed suicide, and you talked about that earlier.
August 1st. Yeah, in prison.
August 1st of this year. And I mean, what kind of reports have come out about that? Are there any details about how he did it, why he did it, what he was like in prison, anything like that?
Yeah, immediately, of course. He immediately filed for appeal. I was shocked. I was stunned, because I was like, oh, this guy is going to fight this until all the way up to the Supreme Court if he can, right? Yeah. I'd say at least to the Supreme Court of North Dakota. Minimum. He is going to go through his appeals process, and then even if he gets put on death row, off the top of my head, I do not remember. I don't think he was sentenced to death. It was life sentence. But even say for the example, even if North Dakota did have public, still did have executions, he'd fight it. He'd fight it all the way. For him to show up dead, and again, immediately everyone wants to like crank up the conspiracy theories.
Like,
you got to like. The whole Jeffrey Epstein didn't hang himself, all that kind of thing. I'm like, no, this is a guy, because Chad Isaak is a very, with the exception of what he clearly did, or, allegedly, if you want to do that, but he was found guilty. He was convicted, found guilty, and sentenced. Even if he is such like sort of a nice, unassuming, quiet, soft-spoken, I can absolutely imagine that he is just, hey, not giving any problems to the guards on that. I read all the reports about that too. This is a guard, God bless his heart. He was like, well, I was a little lax because they're in that tiny room and they really can't go anywhere for privacy. So if they're changing or if they're using the bathroom, I'll let them put a little piece of cardboard over the window, and that's just for privacy's sake. And that's what he did. He put a piece of cardboard over the window.
Yeah.
The naive young guard or whatever, like he didn't hang him. He didn't get paid by.
Yeah.
He didn't get paid by a family to like finish the deed. Or like it's just a guy who effed up at his job and went like, I mean, he's probably like me. He probably thought that guy's going to appeal. He was in the midst of appealing.
Yeah.
That guy just wants to take a dump.
Yeah.
Without the whole world looking at him, because they have to check every.
Yeah.
I forget if it's every hour, or every 15 minutes on that floor, and that's how he was able to do it. He was able to hang himself without anyone seeing it, and long enough so that by the time the check came, he didn't answer the door, didn't take out the cardboard. They opened it up, and he was gone. So again, once again, back to another thing of like, who thought that was going to happen? Not me.
Yeah, not me either. Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, so is
no.
that what's next for you in relation to this case? I mean, obviously, Chad has now passed away
Yeah.
from his own doing. So
Yeah.
is it just the creative process here? You're still inspired and love the pilot and want to kind of
Oh,
yeah.
to be certain, I have all 5 seasons worked out. I use it. It took me a while because my managers love a bunch of my stuff, but they all love stuff that is old, which means I had to take extra time to like
Hmm.
punch up and polish. But I kept saying like my manager, and then and then also the the vice president, who's the head of production at the same management company, who I have good relationships with both of them. I like them a lot. And I finally I kept going. I'm like, I'm telling you, it's this one. I'm telling you, it's this one. This is like, if you need to. Eventually, I got one. I was like, this is if you want to try and get me staff writing jobs. This is my sample.
Hmm.
They want to know if they want to know I can write, and they want to know that I can like this is the one. And it's obviously something I can do a lot of follow up conversation with
Yeah. Yeah.
afterwards. If nothing else, you know how it is. Like, if nothing else, I may get an interview just from a person going like, "Yeah, we're looking at a couple different people, but like, so this is based on a true crime,
Yeah.
right?
Tell
What,
us about
like,
that. Yeah.
yeah, because creative people are like they're fascinated about this stuff, just the
Yeah.
same way like you're bringing me on here. And
Yeah.
then also, I finally got the vice president of production to read it, and he was like, "Oh my god, wow!" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Thank you. This is the one
Well,
where I'm gonna cast it. I'll probably play a role in it, but this is the one where I'm selling it like this is the like Stan versus Evil Dana
hmm.
Gold one where
Hmm.
I'm just like, hey, give me a I'll shoot this like a small independent film. It's a
Hmm.
very small cast. Send me somewhere off into BF Egypt. I'm the writer, I'm the showrunner, I'm the director, I play one of the leads. Give me 2 editors, 2 staff writers, and a staff assistant, and leave me alone for 6 months, and I'll bring
Yeah.
you back a series.
Yeah.
I'll bring you back a 10 episode season. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm looking at right now. I'm trying to make it so that I can go like definitely a mini room. I'm
Hmm.
trying to go to a streamer like an Amazon
Oh yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
a Hulu
It's yeah.
or a smaller one like a Stars or an AMC Plus
Yep.
or like FXXX. I'm like, for the dollar amount that I can make this for, and for the quality that it is, you'd be dumb to not greenlight the
Hmm.
show because I'll be the cheapest thing on your network and
Yeah.
it'll be good. Yeah.
And look,
So
years ago, I took like a weekend intensive screenwriting class with the
mhm.
guy who wrote the first draft of Pretty Woman, and he wrote many other things.
Yeah.
He was one of the first writers to like sell a spec script for $1 million, which
Mhm.
doesn't happen anymore. Now you sell them for $1. So,
Dude, Joel's who is it? What's his name that wrote Basic Instinct and Sliver?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sliver, he made $5 million for a 5-page outline because
yeah,
that's how much of a hit
yep.
Basic Instinct was. They were like, we are going to pay you $1 million a page for a
Yeah,
treatment. Treatment.
it
Okay,
doesn't happen anymore.
sorry.
So anyway,
No,
he had this
no.
great lesson that I is always stuck with me, which is you can be practicing this, you can be studying it, you can be whatever your art form is. It can literally apply to anything in entertainment, and you could be amazing at it. People in Hollywood aren't going to care. They care about the story, and not just the story of the thing you're creating, the story behind you. And it's
Yep.
like this already kind of has that for you because it has the tie-in of your interest in the real case, going to the trial. You could have even
Mhm.
just driven past the trial, and people are still going to be like,
Yeah,
wait, you went to North Dakota to
I was there.
follow this thing? So yeah,
Mhm.
it has the story behind it. So I wish you the best of luck with it. And
Thank you.
yeah.
I literally told someone that earlier today. I had a digital cup of coffee with someone of like, hey,
Mhm.
I heard you're trying to make your first movie, and that's how I sold my first movie. I shot Killer View about a
Mhm.
serial killer.
Serial killer, yeah.
Yeah, I shot it on disposable video cameras, those that they shot from CVS Pharmacy, and that's how I sold it. It's
Yeah.
a very good movie. I'm very proud of it. It's still, I think it still holds up.
Yeah.
But walking into a room with executives and going, and I shot it like I pulled it out of
Yeah.
my pocket
Yeah.
and I shot it on this, and their eyes go wide because I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the angle. Robert Rodriguez
Yeah.
donated his body to science and raised
Yeah.
$7,000 to shoot El Mariachi. Kevin Smith, like the story of how you made the thing has to be equally as important, if not more important, than the story that you're telling.
Yeah.
And yeah, this one, I know I have this. I have this backwards and forwards, and it's just convincing people. If you don't have, if you don't have them, like, I am lopping a zero off the end of what you normally spend for a television show at your network. And if you're telling me that me plus this plus fill in the blank of who plays the female detective, the
Mhm.
female FBI agent
FBA,
that comes
yeah.
to town, you put I don't I've already got the pitch. I'm like, You give me Jane Lynch, Sarah Oh, Kate McKinnon, or Frances McDormand. You pick which one of those that you want, and you put them in the lead, and plus me in this story. And you're saying for the price point that I'm offering it to you, and you don't want this movie, tell your boss that, and then tell me what he says, and then I'll accept no as an answer. So go to the head of production at your network and say, yeah, here's the idea, here's the script, here's the deck, here's the person that they want to put in it, and here how cheap it is. And I said no. I feel like you know how it is. You've pitched enough where it's like, I gotta make it to the point, like, if you go to your boss and admit that you turn this down, you'll get fired. Because they don't care about anything else.
Well, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. And because he's on the podcast, I now own 10% of this. So help Brian out.
You know what? 90% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
There you go.
I'll take it.
There you go. Well, thank you.
Non-binding. Thank you, man.
Very binding. No, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for sharing the story,
your
knowledge of it. Yeah. Anything else before we take off? I mean, we went on a little tangent there, but I thought it was good stuff. So
it's good. I mean, like, you can Google my name, Brian James O'Connell, and you can find all the stuff you need to. So I don't need to rattle off all the @s for the social media.
All your plugs. All the plugs.
Yeah. People know where to find me. Just right now I'm waiting. I wrote what's Dan Harmon's company that I'm blanking on. Starburns. I wrote a holiday themed stop motion animation feature for Starburns and our partners in Canada that we're just waiting to hire a director, and then that'll get greenlit. I'm the official writer of the Anarchist Cookbook television adaptation. It's animated. It's me. Emmett McDermott is the executive producer and owner of the intellectual property. He's the guy that came up with 60-Second Docs. He just did White Hot, the Abercrombie and Fitch documentary on Netflix.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
John Sherman's the showrunner. He was a writer for a long time on Frasier, a bunch of things. Dan Turoff is the producer who worked at MGM for that. And then this thing. Those are I'm writing something that I'm not allowed to talk about, but it's another true crime mass murder serial killer thing that has, knock on wood, a lot of things going. So it's a lot of family entertainment, a lot of that stuff. And so I'm kind of at the point where I know that I have to thank you outright, appreciate it, because this is another thing that I'm going to use to try and sell it.
Absolutely.
I'm like, listen to the podcast while you're on the treadmill, person, and then they'll be like, I got it. There's no way. I got it. At least I got to talk to O'Connell and make sure that he's not full of shit. No way that's true. And so I appreciate the opportunity you give me for that, because this is the one that I'm like, this is the one I can do. This is the one I know I can do.
Absolutely.
And that's do that. So that's what's helpful for me there. And also, we're just good friends, and we're going to be working on stuff soon. And so I wanted to be like, let me come on and make a double album of a podcast on this subject. Right? If you have if you keep your things down to an hour, break it up into two. Don't make listen to a 3-hour podcast.
No, I don't think we even recorded that long, so it won't happen.
No, we did. We're good.
And that music means that we've hit the conclusion of the episode. Thank you again, Brian. Be sure to check out his work, Brian James O'Connell. Look him up. And make sure to subscribe to A Study of Strange. Check out our giveaway on Patreon and the additional content therein. Easiest way to find that information is our website, www.astudyofstrange.com. Follow the show on Instagram at A Study of Strange. I always forget stuff here in the outros. Let's see, theme music by the incomparable Matt Glass. His info is always in the show notes. Oh, send me scary stories. astudyofstrange@gmail.com. I want you on the show. Thank you all for listening. Good night.